We're back with another exciting episode of Now California Politics, Chapter 4, on the California State Legislature. So, again, when you're reviewing these chapters, and I go through, these will definitely be shorter because we are kind of treading on similar information. But in terms of your exams, Chapter 3 should have been on the midterm, so this Chapter 4 will be on the final. Any difference that you identify between the state level and the federal level, those are things that you're going to be tested on, okay? My pictures here just to kind of like make these notes a little less boring. So again, these are kind of important people with regards to the state of California. This is the leader of the Senate, right? Her name is Toni Atkins, and she's from San Diego area. And then this is Anthony Rendon. I think I spelled his name correctly this time on this set of notes. And he's the California Assembly Speaker, right? And he's from Lakewood, which is out in LA. Actually, he got his PhD from UC Riverside. Like I'm hopefully trying to do, and his dissertation advisor is the same one I had no idea. So that's not going to help me at all. He's not going to get me a job. He probably hates my guts if he met me, but interesting. The world's kind of a small place. So here we have legislators are obliged to express the will of citizens they represent. Their decisions will impact every citizen's life in some manner, right? So this is why politics is such a big deal, even though those of us who don't care about this stuff or aren't interested in it, like myself, because the decisions they make and the consequences could care less about what I feel about them. They're going to impact me, right? So here we get to the design and purpose and function of the legislature. And so again, a lot of retread, but responsible for making laws and policies, right? So again, policies here would be like a lot of this COVID response. There aren't laws about wearing a mask. There aren't laws about what you have to do, but the state has the power and the legislature has the power to kind of have these policies. And a lot of these kind of COVID things are kind of temporary measures, right? Like do these things or they're highly recommended, but they're not laws, right? Because there's constitutional issues with this COVID stuff. So I know we all talk about you should wear a mask or not, but I got in an argument with the guy. I just forgot to wear the mask, and he held it to me, and I was very offended. And I was going to go get the mask, and then he just kept following me and yelling at me. I was like going to do what he said, and he started saying, it's the law, it's the law. And I was going to get irritated because I was going to be like, it's not the law, you son of a gun. It's a regulation, it's a policy, it's different. But I just called him a bunch of profanities and left. In doing these things, they're primarily tackling different problems the state has, whether it's infrastructure issues or even immigration issues. That's what the legislature is responsible for. And again, it's very similar. The legislature resembles the U.S. Congress or the federal legislature in form and function, right? So we have two houses. It's bicameral. That key term comes up again. We need two houses. Numbers to know for the test. Oh, my nose got itchy. Sorry. You should know that. But there are 80 members in the assembly, which is kind of like the House representatives, right? And there are 40 members in the Senate in the upper house. In 2010, new census is coming out, so I might have to update this, the 2020 census every 10 years. But the 2010 census notes that each California Assembly district comprises roughly 465,000 people. I know there's 600 there, but I didn't say it. So almost 500,000 people. We're a big state. The Senate, California Senate comprises almost 1 million people, okay? A California Senate district has more people in it than states like Wyoming, Vermont, Alaska, North and South Dakota. And that's just kind of food for thought when you're thinking about, say, even the federal representation, how big our state is, right? There are more people in California than there are people in Canada. A major difference with the U.S. federal government with California legislators is an important key term, big difference, as I noted earlier, is that legislators in this state are term limited. In 1990, voters adopted Proposition 140, an initiative, right? So that goes back to our Chapter 3, the difference between initiatives and propositions. An initiative that restricted the number of terms that assembly members and senators could hold. In 2012, voters changed the rules through Prop 28, effectively reducing the total numbers of years that lawmakers can serve to 12, down from 14. That's from page 46 in our reading. So what does that mean? Once you serve your 12 years, you can't run for re-election anymore. Remember, that's a big difference in Chapter 11, I believe, with the federal level, which is that they can run until they die or they get voted out, and then they can run again if they lose. And so that's just not the case with California, and that seems to have these kind of good things and bad things to it. They can either serve in the House or split their time in each. Important to recall this institutional feature as it is responsible for both good and bad aspects of our current political order in California. Voting districts are drawn or redrawn every 10 years, and in 2008, Prop 11, this is done through a 14-member independent citizens commission. Okay, so that's kind of important. So drawing those districts has a lot of political power. So the state moved through our direct democratic process to kind of have these non-partisan people make these districts through whatever qualifications that they require. Page 51 of the book talks about descriptive representation and substantive representation. Again, especially if you pursue political science, this is something that I think political science is particularly preoccupied with, probably to their detriment. But descriptive representation has to do with the idea that when people kind of look like you, they're more apt to represent you, right? So women would be better representing women's issues. A Latino person or a black person would be better representing Latino people. But again, in black people, this isn't always the case. It's kind of, I actually kind of find this to be philosophically problematic. But substantive representation is a substance, right? So if a white man is talking about the civil rights issues that different communities care about, does it really matter what the person looks like? So I think you can probably tell which one I favor. But then again, to play devil's advocate, right? With descriptive representation, right, there are things that say a biological woman is going to be able to be empathetic towards than, say, a man. And like obviously, like having children and the burden that pushes on a person, right? Not that it's a bad burden, but it's like, a man really can't understand, like, you could die giving birth, and sometimes it's difficult to even have children. So men may be able to conceptually understand these things, but not perhaps have the experience of that, right? Representatives work in major categories of public law and policy. These include the annual budgeting for the state, constituency service, and oversight of the executive branch, right? So just the same types of things. This is Chad Mays. He's actually independent, and he is the California Assembly member for District 42, which is the Palm Desert area. So maybe some of you voted for him. Maybe you had no idea who Chad Mays was, but that's as of 2020, that's the case. I always have to update and change these notes as I make videos. So, public policy and lawmaking, the legislature introduces bills, potential laws, to address the state's concerns. Bills must be passed in identical form by both the legislative houses and go to the governor for signature. So that very much operates like the federal level. And then we get to this kind of committee stuff. Again, I would recommend reading this stuff, but this won't be heavy testing components. There are 31 committees in the Assembly, 22 standing committees in the Senate. The legislature can act in several ways, right? Pass resolutions, express the legislature's position on a particular issue. Local bills deal with concerns like specific land use issues, introduce wide sweeping bills. Legislative members have staffs to help research. So again, like when you think of a legislator, or if maybe some of you people have talked to them, or some of the people in the class, some of you folks have worked with them, like, yeah, it's not just one person. It's a lot of work that goes involved in representing an area. Again, like how many people we said, 500,000 and 900,000 people. So you're going to need a staff. And so part of this legislative process actually is this staff that helps them write the bills and research the bills and do the politicking. This is actually a longer video than I anticipated. It's legislative members, staff, committees, the legislative and analyst office. So again, this is important, like the GAO and the OMB at the federal level. The LAO, the legislative analyst office, is a nonpartisan organization that reviews budgets and costs. So they're kind of like checking and accounting and making sure all the numbers add up, right? So that's a very important kind of institutional apparatus. Annual budgeting starts in the 10th of January every year when the governor submits their version of the budget to the legislature, because again, the legislature is going to control the money. This process should end by the 15th of January, but the budget is officially, or is when it's constitutionally due. So again, we have a constitutional thing, which we don't have the federal. It says, hey, you have to get this done, right? So it's kind of to help the morass of politics, the slowness. But the budget could be delayed. This ended in 2010 with the passing of Prop 25. The law lowered the threshold of legislative votes needed to pass a budget to a simple majority. Because this is one of the things people argue about all the time. Politics is money. This change to a simple majority threshold in passing the state's budget is a critical institutional feature. This is important of the state of California that has led to the marginalization of the Republican Party in California politics. Right. So there are millions and millions of Republicans, especially when you get away from the cities in the state of California. Right? We have a lot of agriculture sector, but because there's just less of them, and now that you just don't need to kind of have essentially a compromise, have a higher threshold to passing budgets, because the Democratic Party is essentially so ubiquitous in the state, they basically now control all the meaningful political apparatus of the state. So there's no need to compromise, which again, if you're a Democrat, like that's great. If you're a Republican, not so much. And if you're someone who's kind of like a moderate and you like compromise, right, there's no need to compromise. So the GOP can no longer influence public policy, thus attaining political clout by impacting the outcomes of the state budget, right? So there's good and bad things to that if you're a Democrat. So for instance, like if you're a part of the Democratic Party, then in our state, it's very difficult to blame Republicans for anything, right? So you get the benefit of being in charge, but you lose the benefit of being able to blame the other party. Let's see. Legislators also help citizens cut through bureaucratic red tape. This is what is meant by constituency service and outreach. Legislative elected officials, aka politicians, also conduct public relation efforts in order to show voters that they are working hard to serve the public. Right. So again, like maybe there's just a pothole that's on your street and no one's taking care of it. Maybe you can go to your assembly member and then they're able to put pressure maybe on the local mayor or something like that. So this is like their way of being responsive and helping. It's more than just say like passing laws. It's like you're doing things. A lot of times, you know, especially for you who are all maybe thinking about going to like a really good 4-year, you might be able to go talk to an assembly person or a state senator or a congressperson and see if you can kind of squeeze out of them a letter of recommendation. That kind of oftentimes looks really good for a lot of things. A lot of times if you go in the military, you need a letter of recommendation from a politician of some sort. Now that a simple majority is needed to pass, again, healthier economic times, the trade-off is that cutbacks are less likely. Republican representatives have fallen lows and are irrelevant. So again, if you're a Republican, that's so great. And if you're a Democrat, you're like, this is the best thing. But yeah, so short chapter, that's it. A couple more of these to do today, and I will see you guys in the next video.